Thanks for staying with us. You're watching the Rise News, and this is Daybreak. It's time to bring you our paper review, a look at the front pages and analysis of a big story. A couple of stories dominate the front pages this morning, including the mass abduction from a school in northwest Nigeria. Here's how our sister publication is reporting it. With collapse of local governments, 287 pupils, teachers kidnapped in Kaduna. Sani Abbas condemned development, charged security to go after criminals. Fulani groups demand 108 million naira compensation for rustled cows. In the yellow window, 2024 International Women's Day. President Bola Tinubu celebrates Nigerian women, says they are pivots of the nation. And above the masthead, our last story from this day this morning, CBN overseas remittances increased to $1.3 billion in February amid FX reforms.
The Punch. Outrage as bandits kidnapped 280 pupils from Kaduna school. Teacher says gunmen invaded primary secondary schools and, of course, kidnapped 280 pupils and some workers. The governor visits the school, promises pupils rescue. INI, PTA, Amnesty International condemn attack. Recover 5 trillion naira unremitted MDA taxes, reps tell RRS. And Kaduna plane crash, pilots escape death, air chiefs order probe. Minimum wage, workers differ, governors want revenue sharing reviewed. On the top mast, the president suspends REA boss directors over alleged 1.2 billion naira fraud, and reps demand 2024 budget review over forest crisis. Wigwe's philanthropy, dedication to gospel exemplary, from Adeboye.
The New Telegraph this morning, similar headlines. We'll just take the biggest. On the front page, bandits invade Kaduna school, shoot pupil, abduct 280. Angry residents protest incessant attacks, barricade Kaduna-Abuja expressway. On new minimum wage, NLC is proposing 709,000 naira, TUC 447,000, and in Plateau State they're saying 80,000. What should it be? That's the New Telegraph.
The Daily Trust has a similar headline this morning. Bandits abduct 287 students. Principal from Kaduna school. Meanwhile, Bruno dispatches team to rescue abducted female IDPs. The Daily Trust.
And then the Vanguard is stalking the school kidnap and minimum wage. NLC TUC split, want different pay in zones. Bandits invade Kaduna school to kidnap more than 200 pupils and teachers. That's the Vanguard.
Some international papers this morning. The I paper, Labour and Tories refuse to explain UK spending cuts before the 2024 election. That's the I.
Well, the fallout of Wednesday's spring budget continues to lead the front pages. Let's see what the Daily Mail is saying this morning. Yes, don't leave our country defenseless, says the paper.
Daily Express says, Brexit is a great British success story worth billions.
All right, for the press review and the biggest stories, we have Lemi Ugebe joining us now. Lemi, good morning. Thanks for being here bright and early. National dailies are leading with the same story. If you take a look at This Day, New Telegraph, Punch. If we take a look at our sister publication, with collapse of local government, 287 pupils, teachers kidnapped in Kaduna State. It's almost unbelievable, these numbers, Lemi.
Wow, good morning, everyone. It's very shocking. It's very depressing. And to think that it is happening less than 24 hours to the International Women's Day. Today marks the International Women's Day with the theme with a theme that has to do with invest in women, accelerate progress. On a day like this where we are supposed to be saying Happy International Women's Day and calling for equal opportunities for the girl child, we are talking about 287 pupils and their teachers kidnapped in Kaduna State. This again heightens or diminishes efforts by lots of us to call for the girl child education, because as far as schools remain unsafe, it diminishes our advocacy, because of course parents who can even afford to send their girl child to school are further discouraged by the fact that these kids are not safe. To think that 287 pupils and their teachers will be taken into custody by these terrorists, kidnappers, bandits, whatever you call them. And 287, in my candid view, even as someone who owns a poultry, it will be very difficult for anyone to come into my poultry and steal 287 birds. So it becomes really very shocking, very worrisome that human beings, children, and it's the height of desperation for these kidnappers, that children of primary school going age and secondary school ages will be taken in this number again. It's again raises the question of security. Like we have read in the papers, the place where this happened were not fenced. Even if they were, we've seen cases, Chibok and co, where they went in and picked them in hundreds again. So it's really a very big concern, and you know, the regular refrain on the part of government is to say we are going to do everything, we are going to rescue them and all that. It's worrisome. It's worrisome because intelligence also tells us that part of why our security architecture has collapsed totally and our country is so porous is because of the policy of the immediate past president, Muhammadu Buhari, who actually ordered that the borders be thrown open. Of course, you know we have porous borders ordinarily, but by his policy, he says everybody can come into our country and do business. I say this with all sense of responsibility because last week I was here and I told you one of our colleagues from News Agency of Nigeria who was kidnapped finally escaped from the kidnappers then, and he shared intelligence of the fact that those who kidnapped him were certainly foreigners of the Fulani extractions. They couldn't speak a word of Hausa. They were speaking very different brand of Fulani or Fulfude, as you will call it. And we've heard the former governor of Kaduna State, Nasiru El-Rufai, also talk about these Fulani people not being Fulanis from Nigeria. They are foreigners. We've opened our borders. The immediate past president, Muhammadu Buhari, has to take credit for this, for opening our borders in that manner, ordering that people should be allowed to come in and do business. And unfortunately, the business they are doing is terrorism. Remember the efforts of Arakunrin, late Arakunrin Akeredolu, when he ordered that all those in the forest in Ondo State should all leave the forest, come out. If they must go back to the forest, they should come out and be properly documented. The president then, the then president, Muhammadu Buhari, found his voice with others, and they criticized Akeredolu and fought him over that policy. Meanwhile, that Ondo forest is a major forest where a lot of insecurity is going on. Where my friend from Nan was picked was actually on the Ondo Forest Road. So there's so much porous borders, there's so much that needs to be done, and I do not envy our security chiefs, our police, because the work that has to be done has to take all and sundry, including restoring local government authorities, because without local governments, how do you monitor?
Indeed, just Like these days, reporting that the collapse of local government is partly responsible for what we are seeing. But let me, for want of time, because we have to throw to our Lagos studio in a couple of minutes to see what they have for us in store on the morning show. Let's look at what the Vanguard is reporting this morning. They are bucking the trend and they decided to focus on the minimum wage. Vanguard, NLC TUC splits, one different pay in different zones. Sense or no sense, Lemmy?
Just ridiculous, it's ludicrous. I do not see how anybody will be proposing 500 or 700,000 naira as minimum wage. It makes absolutely no sense. You do not make demands that you know are impractical and unachievable. You make reasonable demands. And I do not think that salary increase can actually ever really solve the problem that we have. What Labour is supposed to put pressure on government to do is to make sure that basic infrastructures, education, Medicare are made subsidized at a level that we can afford it. If public schools are functioning very well, then you and I would not need to begin to look for money in order to go and pay private school fees, which is very exorbitant. So even if you are paid 500,000 today, it will lead to increase in the inflation rate. It will diminish the value of the 500,000 naira Labour is proposing. So I really do think that salary increase will never solve the problem. And take note that the number of people who work with government that we are talking about here, it's not up to 30% of the workforce. So what happens to those in the private sector? So what needs to be done is for government to make the necessities of life, such as education, such as infrastructure, transport, water, so that you and I do not continually constitute ourselves into local governments where we provide all of these infrastructures and basic amenities for ourselves. That way, the cost of living will be brought down. That way, if you earn 100,000, it will become reasonable and it will become a living wage. But increasing the wages to 500 is certainly not tenable.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you that over the years, they have suffered salaries not being increased and inflation eroding the expendable income in people's hands. Thank you so much for being here early with us on the press preview.